Namaste. Soldiers on the war front often experience shell shock. It's an extreme form of fear when a bomb explodes nearby. Such an experience often leaves its imprint on the psychological health of the soldier for a long time. This is one of the many instances when a traumatic event leads to a long standing psychological difficulty for the person. But trauma doesn't necessarily only happen on the war front. Traumas can happen anywhere, anytime, and to anyone. Healing scars of trauma is not easy either for the patient or for the healer. And today, to discuss this subject, we have with us psychoanalysis consultant, Mr. Himanshu Vaidya. Namaste, sir.
Namaste.
Sir, can we start with what is trauma and stress related disorder?
This is a good way to start because often a confusion comes into our mind on the definition of trauma. Because one way to understand it is that all psychopathology essentially is traumatic. If we use the word trauma in a larger sense of the word. So what happens is, if let us say somebody develops a problem out of Oedipal phase, one can say it's a Oedipal trauma. If you develop a problem out of a Kleinian split, you can say it's a Kleinian trauma. So then the question comes, what is not a trauma? Because that way, if we define trauma, then half of DSM will fall under this chapter. So what we have to do is be very clear that we are talking about an external trauma. It is not an internal trauma of the Oedipus or the open split. It is an external trauma where an event has happened which had two elements, very large intensity and a sense of suddenness to it. So it is an event of very high intensity and does not give you time to process it. There is an element of suddenness to it. This combination of high intensity and suddenness creates problems for us which uh, reside with us for quite a long time. And these problems are what we call as traumatic problems, problems of trauma. And these traumas, obviously, we are referring to real life external events, not psychoanalytic internal events. This chapter deals with two kinds of problems: problems of trauma and problems of stress. Because there can be a possibility that you have slow continuous stress, not a one-off event of very high intensity. So this chapter deals with 5 essential problems, out of which 4 are based upon trauma, a sudden high impact event, and the last one is based upon a continuing stress. Okay. So this is the chapter on trauma and stress related disorders, where we are dealing with problems which are related to both trauma as well as stress, which may not be high impact, which may not have element of suddenness, but it is a continuing stress also leading to psychopathological problems.
So, sir, what are the disorders that are covered under this chapter, especially in DSM-5?
There are 5 of them. The first 2 are primarily to deal with children, and this would cover your interest. Often you raise a question of age, right? And the first 2 in the chapter uh, cover children more pervasively. Uh, so let us go over the 5 of them, 5 names that are there. The first is reactive attachment disorder. Second is uh, inhibited attachment disorder. Third is the famous post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. Fourth is acute stress disorder, and the fifth is adjustment disorder. The first four are related to incident trauma and event trauma. And the fifth one is a long-standing strife or conflict in the face of a stressor. Let us look at what these disorders are. The first one, reactive attachment disorder. This is essentially a childhood trauma, a childhood disorder, which is usually uh, diagnosed for children more than 9 months of age, but usually less than 6 years of age. And the problem here is the person, the child, uh, finds it difficult to accept emotional closeness with anyone. The child does not seek comfort or security from people when he needs it. A normal child, when he is in distress, would like caregivers to give him warmth, comfort, and security. Children suffering from this disorder, they find it difficult to ask from others these things which naturally they should be asking for. Even if somebody provides them with security, comfort, and warmth, they find it difficult to receive it. So asking is a problem, receiving is a problem. Positive thinking, positive mood, positive actions are difficult. There is an intrusion or a setting of negative feelings, negative thoughts, anxiety, negative mood changes, dysphoric mood, and all of them have suffered from some sort of neglect, emotional neglect, uh, which by normal standards would be called the neglect, which may be because of non-responsive caregivers or because of uh, there being too many people. Say for example, in orphanages there are too many children and very less number of caregivers, or maybe there is a sickness or separation from the caregiver. But there is some attachment trauma where the attempt at attachment has failed, causing very high amount of pain and often fear in the mind of the child, and therefore there is a inhibition to attach back to the person, and we see almost a repeat of what Freud will say secondary narcissism, but we do not have the grandiosity here. So there is the two elements common between this disorder and secondary narcissism is, in both cases, the child goes out to attach, is frustrated, and comes back hurt and with a lot of pain, and therefore develops a diffidence to go out again and attach to somebody. But in secondary narcissism, it develops into grandiosity, whereas here it does not develop into grandiosity. So this is the first one, the reactive attachment disorder, difficulty to attach to people. The second is disinhibited attachment disorder, the counterpart of it, that the child just does not feel any inhibition and the child is desperate to attach to anyone who comes near to that person. There is no background check. The normal stranger anxiety which a child has is very low or almost absent. And these children also have suffered from childhood neglect because of certain reasons. Maybe the caregivers were not good enough, caregivers were absent, there were too many children and too less caregivers, or something of that sort. So both of them are the two faces.
Can it even be
Yeah.
not able to internalize the good object around, or no?
Yes, yes.
That.
Because both of them, the reactive disorder and the disinhibited disorder, are both responses to the same thing, object loss. because of object loss, person develops a disinhibited attachment, desperation to the object. So it is the same object loss phenomena responsible for both these things. One goes on the line of, in the extreme, the the reactive person, if it goes to the extreme, will result in an avoidant personality disorder. And the other one will result in the histrionic personality disorder. But of course, people
Sir, you need to unmute. I think आपका mute पे चला गया. हाँ.
so they so both of them, the reactive as well as the disinhibited part, are responses to object loss. The third one is the famous one of this chapter, the PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And this is the core of the, not the core, but I think the centrality of the chapter, because most people, very large amount of number of people fall in this category. And post-traumatic stress disorder is very unique because it has elements of anxiety spectrum disorders, elements of disassociation, elements of low mood and impairment. Right? So let us look at what these are. If somebody is to be diagnosed for PTSD, he should show certain characteristics in the 5 different areas. The first is, the person must have experienced a real life trauma. And then as a result of it, he should show symptoms in other 4 or 5 categories. If the first one is not there, he has not experienced trauma per se, then the other characteristics can be explained by other chapters of DSM. So the first is, the person must have had a traumatic experience, which means he must have experienced trauma himself, or he must have seen traumatic event happening to somebody, or he must have heard it from somebody, or he must have been to the scene post trauma to see the remains of the traumatic event. Like for example, after tsunami, if you go to Sri Lanka and you see so many dead bodies, you are going there after a trauma and you are seeing the remnants of the trauma. So in this way, direct or indirect, there has to be an exposure to trauma. 1. 2, after exposure to the trauma, there have to be intruding thoughts. You should, even if you don't like it, be reminded of thoughts related to the trauma. 3, you should have dreams related to the trauma, even if you don't want them. 4, it should lead to negative mood, negative thought, negative self-appraisal. Often feelings of guilt and shame as though you were responsible. It may also lead to disassociative features where you may not remember certain things related to the trauma or something related to the traumatic event. And there has to be a revisit of that event where on the particular day or date of that event, you will feel more uncomfortable. And there has to be avoidance of everything related to the trauma. Anything that reminds you of the trauma, you would like to avoid. So all these elements have to be there for somebody to be really diagnosed with PTSD. Okay? And I'm reminded here of an interview of a soldier that I saw. Uh, in Indian military history, 1962 war is a very important event with China, and there was a very famous battle of Rezigla or something. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but there was a very famous battle in which uh, one company of Indian Army uh, fought very heroically, and very few people survived out of that company. I think only one or two people survived. Rest of them died. One survivor, he is still alive, and he gave an interview to a TV channel, and I saw it. He says the dates on which this battle happened, and this was 62, now it is 2020, right? uh, and I think the interview must have been not less than, not older than 10 years. It looked to be interview around 2010 or 12 or something, or maybe even after that. I think the person is still alive. He says, even today, when those dates come, for those 3 days, I am not able to sleep. I speak in my dreams. I become hyper vigilant. Okay? So this is also a feature that for years people are suffering from that trauma. And one of the features which I forgot to mention was of actions that people do when the traumatic memory comes. They become hyper vigilant. They start blaming themselves. They become fearful. Some of them even start taking precautionary measures. So these elements of one category of events being exposed to the trauma, second category of facts related to negative feelings of that event, intruding thoughts, intruding dreams, uh, disassociation features, memory loss, hypervigilance, avoidance of anything that makes you recollect of those events, right? And because of all this, impairment in normal functioning. And this has to go on for more than 1 month, then it is PTSD. If it is less than 1 month, then we have a second disorder after PTSD, which is called acute stress disorder. Now, acute stress disorder is like uh, brief psychotic disorder. It is a smaller form of PTSD. So in PTSD, you have to suffer for more than 1 month. In acute stress disorder, 3 days to 1 month. And you don't have to satisfy criteria from all the 5 group of categories. Right? So what it says is, apart from suffering from the trauma, I mean, having been exposed to the trauma directly or indirectly, out of 14 characteristics, if you satisfy 9, even if not from all the categories, you can still be diagnosed with acute stress disorder. So after PTSD is acute stress disorder, a smaller form of PTSD, less intense form of PTSD. Right? And uh, thereafter, we have the adjustment disorder, which is not really a one-time event disorder. It is over the time buildup of stress disorder. So it is not really a one big event trauma. It is over the time buildup of stress. And this is very common when one joins a job, or one relocates to a new city, or one gets married. In the Indian society, post marriage, adjustment disorders today are very common. So it has to be, this disorder is causing high amount of stress, negative feelings, negative thoughts, and it begins at least 1 to 3 months. It normally is 3 months after coming in contact with a stressor. The stressor may be husband, it may be mother-in-law, father-in-law, it may be the boss, right? But after coming in contact with the stressor, within 3 months, the symptoms start appearing. And if the person is taken out of contact with the stressor, within 6 months, the person improves completely. Yeah? So this is disorder which is called, it is because of stress and the stressor is present in the environment. This is called the adjustment disorder. So this is not related to one time big trauma. but over a time exposure to a stressor. Now, uh, in case of children suffering from PTSD, one additional thing that we see is if you allow them to play, they enact the trauma in their play. So this is where the play therapy becomes very good way to investigate the unconscious trauma of the child.
And what would be the psychoanalytic explanation of the causation of this disorder?
Generically speaking, we are looking at too much of affect generation and inability of the system to produce that generated affect, because of which the affect is blocked, and that blocked affect is coming out in various pathological ways. The many ways of understanding this are: one would be that the trauma or the stimulus was so intense that any person would have been traumatized by it. That is one category of the stimulus, so intense that any person would have been traumatized. Second category would be those who have a predisposition because of something unresolved in the childhood. Uh, that is where we see that two soldiers are standing, a bomb explodes in front of them, right, at a few meters. Both of them are equidistant, yet one develops PTSD, one does not develop PTSD. And that is because the childhood resolution of the developmental goals or the developmental path in psychoanalytic terms was better in case of one, and uh, had unresolved issues in case of the other. Okay? So there we look at not only the strength of the stimulus, but also the responding system, how many unresolved issues are there of the childhood in that responding system, which makes the predisposition there. The third is Freud originally thought of the repetition compulsion in trauma as a effort to master the trauma bit by bit. So he felt that if large amount of anxiety or pain or anger was generated in the traumatic event, system could not handle the entire volume at once. So in small installments, the system was healing itself by releasing small amounts of affect every time the event was relived through, okay, remembered. Later on, he felt that this is actually not an attempt at mastery, but people are actually enjoying it. And therefore, it is an attempt of masochism, that on the surface the man is suffering, secretly he is enjoying. And therefore, he is not giving up the trauma. Right? So first trauma caught him, and now he has caught onto the trauma. So this is how Freud later looked at trauma, because during Second World War, all psychoanalysts, including Freud, had lot of PTSD patients. Freud had them, Bion had them, many psychoanalysts had PTSD patients. So what we are looking at is how to release the suddenness and the blockage of that affect. So psychoanalysis looks at it primarily from the point of view of one, uh, too much affect generated which could not be processed, and therefore in psychoanalytic psychotherapy we should be able to revisit, verbalize the unverbalized, understand the ununderstood, and in small pieces cathart out the affect. And second way, look look at it if we find masochism, which is keeping the trauma as it is and not allowing it to heal. And if we find that through the interpretative process, bring it to the notice of the person and allow him to be free from that trauma. So this is with regard to the primary PTSD explanation. With regard to the reactive attachment disorder and the disinhibited attachment disorder, the better explanation comes from object loss. That early life object loss leads to pain and templates. So the person with reactive disorder, he learns that it is painful to get attached. So don't get attached, don't seek comfort, don't seek security. It's a loss-making business. Because the person is ultimately going to leave you, and when he leaves you, the pain is going to be far more than the positive gains of comfort and security which you feel on the way before he leaves you. So it is the end result apprehension which don't allow them to really walk the journey. So it is a avoidant kind of a response to attachment failure and object loss. With regard to the disinhibited behavior, the object loss results in a desperate behavior to again regain objects. So it's a histrionic attempt at making up the vacuum of the object loss. So this is how one looks at it. In case of acute stress disorder, the explanations are same as PTSD. And in case of adjustment disorder, it is essentially inability to articulate one's feelings and not accept reality as it is, and the pain of the desires which are frustrated. And therefore, over a period of time, it all builds up, leading to an adjustment disorder. So it is essentially a question of incompatibility, desire, frustration, inability to articulate, and a hopelessness of not being able to get out of the situation or alter the situation. So this is how psychoanalysis looks in terms of the causation of disorders of this chapter.
So, well, this is the causation, but how does it proceed with the healing of the trauma and the stress disorders?
Trauma patients essentially need a very safe space where they can revisit the trauma, articulate the unsaid, understand the ununderstood, because the trauma's suddenness never gave them the time to be prepared. And in the suddenness of this rise in affect, so apart from the volume of affect, it is the suddenness of the affect which is also very important. And therefore, what we need is a lot of time so that the person can revisit the trauma, articulate it, after articulation, cathartic bit by bit, and not be in love with that trauma and the masochism. Not to relish in the secondary gains of the trauma. So this is how we would proceed with it. Essentially, it's a very good area for psychoanalytic psychotherapy because we really have to go deep to heal the person. So first is to create a safe space in a Cohusian way, not to jump at interpretations, but allow the person first of all a safe space where without any inhibition or fear of criticism, the person can explore himself and articulate all those things, no matter how irrational or absurd they may seem. And slowly, once he knows he is fully accepted unconditionally, start feeling it and express those feelings bit by bit so as to be free from it. And we would be looking at any kind of therapy that one does, Freudian, Kleinian, anything is fine, but start with Cohusian, let it go on for quite some time, and then whatever school you are trained in, you can go into that. In terms of frequency, we would be looking here at least uh, twice a week to 5 times a week, because this requires very often contact of the person. This is not something you can process on your own. This is also not something which will happen outside the therapy room on its own. So from twice a week to 5 days a week, depending upon what the situation is, my guess would be twice a week or thrice a week should be enough for 90% of people. Maybe for a very select minority, we may go for 4 or 5 days a week. And the length essentially would be 1 year to going up to at times even up to 2 to 3 years. But ideally it would be 1 to 2 years. Milder cases 1 year, moderate to strong cases 2 years.
So, well then, what is the role of holistic healing in healing this kind of trauma? And as you rightly said, you always need another person. So, what kind of holistic healing would work here?
Uh, Holistic healing which provides relaxation like Reiki or pranic healing or Tai Chi or yogic practices, certain forms of pranayama or hypnotherapy, homeopathic drugs, medicines can be given by homeopathic doctor. Certain relaxation exercises the person can uh, use for himself, which may not address the core trauma, but can address the negative mood, the negative thoughts, the negative hopeless feelings, the guilt and shame to some extent, if not at its core. So that is where the basket of holistic healing tool comes in. If the person is capable enough, he can do it to himself. If the person is too deeply into the grip of the problem, somebody else can do it for him, Reiki or pranic healing. But we can complement this. One very important element of this is going to social groups and communicating about one's problems. So if we have a PTSD social group like Alcoholic Anonymous, it would be a very great service. And in the holistic healing tool basket, this would be one of the most powerful tools to help the person in accelerate his healing.
So then, how is patient education, like, of course, important in this context?
Uh, the patient should first be free from the anxiety as to what is happening to him. The unknown creates a lot of anxiety. So the patient should know what PTSD is all about, how hundreds and thousands of people are suffering from it. And today, uh, we also talk about complex PTSD, where not one big event, but many small events create PTSD would create. And this refers often to the traumatic treatment given by parents to their children. So many small complex traumas can lead to the same kind of effect. So this is getting a lot of ground today, the complex PTSD. It has not yet come into DSM, but from therapy and psychology standpoint, it's almost at the center now. So once the person knows what he is into, he feels relaxed, he feels informed and enabled to think further about what best he can do for himself. Secondly, he knows to prepare when those days are going to come, when the difficulty is going to be at its worst. Three, he knows why this association happens and he does not remember certain things. That allows him to focus and get more insights and undo as much as possible the amnesia. Fourth, he realizes that the negative feelings and thoughts he has about himself are because of the trauma, they are not a fact. And this restores his self-respect, self-worth, and positivity to a great extent. It also enables him to seek social help, to be in part of social groups, social support groups, and that is a great accelerator for PTSD. Social acceptance and social articulation of one's issues. Lastly, he knows the do's and don'ts. He knows what to report to the healing person, whether therapist or psychiatrist, and how to make use of holistic healing and social support system for himself so that his healing is accelerated, uh, and he can complement best by self-worth whatever he can do to the central healing process, which is based upon psychiatry or psychotherapy.
And so, what would be the do's and don'ts for a family member or a caregiver to help this kind of a person?
First is not to call him crazy. This is what unfortunately many family members do, that they say that whenever this person is exposed to XYZ, or when this particular days or dates come, or when this event happens in front of the person, he just goes crazy. So instead of helping with sickness, it becomes an additional persecution. So first is to understand that it is a sickness deeply seated. It is not a tantrum or a harassing game that the person is playing consciously. Two, this requires deep and long-term work. Three, the psychoeducation of parents would enable them, they can therefore help the person, especially on those days when everyone knows it's going to aggravate. It may be a particular date, it may be a presence of a particular event. Parents also have to be supportive in terms of therapy, because it's going to be very intensive therapy with lot of very high frequency, and that causes some burden in terms of travel, energy, time and money to the parents, right? So that is a support that is required. If parents are well psychoeducated, they know what to report and what not to report to the healer so that the relevant things get reported. They can help the person in getting attached to a social group and encourage that activity. And lastly, they can help the person develop some holistic healing skills or get help from some holistic healer, and also prevent themselves from developing any secondary problem of anxiety or irritation or anger, which may be because of the PTSD affected behavior of the patient.
I think all the disorders that we've spoken about, everything boils down to the right kind of parenting, right? The childhood traumas, if you don't have, I mean, if you are relatively low on the childhood traumas, or you save for life. Thank you, Mr. Vaidya, for sharing your knowledge with us. And on that note, we have covered today trauma and stress related disorder. And in our subsequent talks, we would be covering many such disorders from the DSM-5. To watch our videos, and you can even write to us at hvindia@gmail.com. Thank you. Namaste.
Namaste.